Okay, today I'm going to show you how I edit a Cityscape panoramic image on Lightroom from scratch. The picture I've chosen today I took at Sydney on the north side of the bridge near Kirribilli about an hour before sunset. I'll first show the process I take to make a panorama. First step I do is find the pictures and make sure they're all in sequence and that they're all lined up and the exposure values are identical. Then I select them and go photo merge panorama. Should come up with something that resembles a pretty decent city shot actually. Yeah, that's not too bad. Obviously the ground wasn't level, or the camera wasn't level because the white is sloping upwards. I usually play with these options here and get the one that's the best. I never really do perspective because it doesn't really produce anything like a good image. I've never really worked out what to use it for. And usually I just scroll between spherical and cylindrical as to what's the best. Usually cylindrical is for more wider shots and not so cityscape shots, because for me the things can be the buildings can be out of proportion. So I'll select spherical. I'll put a little bit of boundary warp on because I want to preserve some of the edges here, but I don't want to do too much as to actually put the roadway and the sea over here on the horizon out of square. So I'll just do 50. I can crop myself later, so that's no problem. And now it's just creating the panorama. It's important when you take these images that you take them very close together in angle terms. You never do more than about 30 degrees. My tripod set up for this particular 4 degrees. Obviously the more zoom you've got on your lens, the closer together the images will be. The particular image up here that I took the day before in almost the same spot has the separation between the images much less than a that panorama from before. So this one was taken at 42mm, and I believe the separation was about 4 to 4.5 degrees, 4 to 4.5 degrees there, and that turned out very well indeed. And this is another one I took the night before, a little bit further around. There were a lot of photographers in that spot, and that was what I managed to produce, and I'm very happy with that image. That's one that I'm entering in my local camera club in a competition that I'll actually print out because it turned out so good. Now let's go back to this image. So this is the panorama. The first thing I do is zoom up on it and see how well it's lined up. This image was taken at a distance, so I wouldn't expect any lining up issues. No, it's very good. Check the edge to see how that warping went. Actually, no, that's turned out quite good. So now, first thing I'll do is straighten it and crop it. The auto has worked fairly well here. Obviously, the section here, this waterline here, is the straightening point. So it should be pretty close. Yeah, it's right on. So the auto's done quite a good job there. I often play around with that to make sure it's right, because I don't want something that's not straight. Now, for cropping, I've turned off unlocked aspect ratio, and now I'm just getting as much in as I can. I'm going to keep that black bit on the right and just clone it out later. So yes, that's pretty good. Now I just basically work my way down the chart here. First thing to do is white balance. Because this is an image taken out on the sunset, the white balance is actually going to be a little bit higher than normal. So I'm just going to look for a grey spot, get a bit of a reference in that building there. Yeah, that's not too bad. It's a shame when I was in Sydney that this particular time the sunset, the night before was good, but it wasn't super spectacular for clouds. Pictures that people have posted on Instagram that are just stunning. 6500, come back to that later. It's a little bit dark in some areas, so we're gonna have to work on that. Now, first step is highlights and shadows. Because it's very bright on the right here, we need to turn highlights down. Let's turn clipping on and see how much I actually get here. It's not too bad. Just got to bring out some of that detail there. Let's play around a bit, I guess. And because this is actually quite a high contrast image to start with, I don't need a lot there for the moment. Bit of clarity, just to bring things out. Now I do want this quite vibrant. These sunset shots and low light shots often can be quite dull, so you have to turn up the colours a bit to make it look better. But you don't want to go over the top because then it looks too unrealistic and then people don't like your image. So play with that. I don't need to go too much on saturation because I'm actually going to turn up individual colours later. We'll leave the tone curve for now. Yeah, so for saturation, obviously there's a lot of blue in this image. So I do need to probably tune it down a little bit. And turn up like yellows and stuff. I want to bring out this light on the right here. But because this image is not a pure sunset, it was taken, that time's wrong, it's actually 4:58. No, that is right. 4:30 and sunset was at 5:15, so still quite a bit of time. Sydney is such a great city for this sorts of shots. If I lived here, which I may do, every day you can go here. Especially if you live in the area, you can just take a train down and walk, set up and play with your shots, I guess. For split toning, now I'm not really into this, mainly because I'm not really sure of how it works, and finding colours can be a bit of a pain, but I'm just going to play with it here and see. Because it's a very blue image, I do want to change the tone a little bit, the actual overall colour, so like almost like a filter. So I've put blue highlights and more almost browny yellow shadows here, and I do want to make it more of a yellow image, just almost like warming it up, but in a more subtle way. So that's good. Detail, I've got a preset here, which I've already installed, that does low sharpening, because I don't really need to sharpen this image because it's actually pretty good anyway. But I might do a little bit there. I could do it in Photoshop later. Because this was shot at ISO 100, noise reduction needs to be no greater than 40. Because their buildings are at a distance too, if you crank up noise reduction, you can start to lose detail, which you obviously don't want. And ISO 100 is pretty much detail anyway, max detail, so noise reduction is not an issue. I don't think we'll need to level the image, because that's already been done, and I've just lost my cropping. Although, it's going full there has brought the bridge away, and it's pulled it away, which I don't like. So I'm just going to fix that. Go back to my original cropping. Chromatic aberration I definitely do want, because being a bright image, there could be purples on the edges of some of the structure, like here. So I'm just going to 3 and 3 on the greens and purples there. That will suffice. Just enough. I'm not really into vignetting of this image, only because I want to focus on the whole image and not want to go in, although that actually doesn't look too bad. But then you can start to make it like a night scene, which is obviously what I don't want at this stage. I'll do a little bit, just for an effect, just for the video. And because I've done some vignetting, it's darkened the dark areas, so I need to compensate for that in the blacks. Not too much as to make it too bright. So 25 to 30 is alright. Dehazing, I usually dehaze my images a little bit, just to help get rid of some of that wash that you can get across the image. If you go high in clouds, or shoot from aircraft and everything's all blue and washed out, you can dehaze your image and it helps. I'll just go 20. It does darken the image, so you have to be careful there, especially if you're working with a dark image to start with. For camera calibration, I'm actually going to leave it in Adobe Standard because I don't want to saturate the colors. Okay, for tone curve now. It's pretty much the same as this up here, this basic. Just taking some more colors. And I do want to turn down the highlights because there's that highlight on the right side there. That's a very dominating part of the image. Just going to play here. It's up to you really what you want to do. I have a preference for my images having a lot more contrast than others. I like a strong difference between blacks and whites, especially in this light level. In a more daytime image, I probably wouldn't do that, because the camera itself has contrasted quite well. It's when the light level decreases is when a lot of modern cameras, digital cameras, struggle with a dynamic range, especially. Film cameras don't really have that issue as such. Films have about 7 to 8 stops of dynamic range. The best digital cameras can have 5, and the human eye has 11. So you can see why it's very hard for a photographer to get the image they want. Now I've just been starting to play with white balance again. Obviously, I know it's too cold if I go down to 5500. So I'm going to stick at 65. I think that's pretty good. Next stage is to remove some spots, and we'll just have a look and see what needs to be done. There's one over here, just above that cloud there. Here somewhere. Oh, it's an aircraft. It is. Looks like a 7. Possibly Qantas there. I'm definitely going to remove that, because that could be a distraction. On the spot. Perfect. I did see one in the top right corner there. Up there. There's a couple small ones above that building there. Probably clouds. Yeah, I'll just take them out. For integrity. Okay, so that's screwed up. Dragged it and it's now too big, so I'm just going to have to make a circle. Because the sky is a constant tone, you're never going to have a problem with matching a spot there. Pretty good. I did see one in the top right hand corner near the bridge. Yeah, that's actually fine. The top there. Somewhere. It's a little one. It's more of a cloud really. I'll just take it out anyway. Yeah, it's not too bad. That's good. Now, because I do want to bring out the yellows in this image, I am going to be using a graduated filter from the right hand side of the image. So I'll just install one now. I tend to use these more for warmth adjustment rather than changing large parts of an image. But I do want to warm up that side. And sort of get the highlights out too. Because of that sun there. It's a dominating part of the image. But I don't want to create a stripe almost effect from where the graduated filter finishes to and where the non-graduated filter part starts. It's very easy to do that. So I only want a small, very, very small details. Very, very small adjustments. Speaking of spots, I think I am going to keep this bit here in because it's going to be almost impossible to remove without ruining the wave there. It's ridiculous, man. It's put a piece of the bridge, for goodness sake, on there. Just gonna have to leave it in. It's alright. Now to fix the water, I do want to, it looks a bit blue and a bit dull, so I'm going to just make it a bit more clarity there. Maybe turn the it's not too bad. It's a very short exposure time, so the water isn't the ice effect you would get if you use a 10-stop leaf filter, which I saw some other photographers using when I was taking my pictures for that filter. Sydney Harbours are difficult. The water's very difficult to get right because it's very constant. It doesn't reflect unless you use a very, very long exposure. Or a polarizing filter, which I didn't have for this particular lens. But I think that's actually quite good. Backslash will get you the preview. And I think that's actually turned out quite well. A lot of clipping on the right here. Dull buildings, and the colours have been brought out. Now for Radial Filter, because this is a sunset, pseudo sunset you could say, I do want to see what this does. See if it actually is any colour. Nah. Can't really use a Radial Filter, the sun's not down far enough for this. I think that's almost close to being done, actually. And there's not a lot of sky that I need to work on, because there's only some clouds on the right hand side there. And the blues really helped there. Don't want to go over the top on these blacks because I do want to keep some of the darkness and some of the light silhouette effect in the image. I think that's pretty good. For an image to put onto Flickr, what I'm going to do now is go into Photoshop and sharpen up the image a little bit. Because this is a ISO 100 image, it doesn't need a lot of noise reduction. Because it was taken on a tripod, it does not need shake reduction. There's the image in Photoshop. What we do for sharpening is go Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. Now this is killing my CPU usage. I don't really need too much. This is basically a setting I use for aircraft photos, which are much closer to the lens. I will actually do a little bit here. Not too much, because then it goes over the top. 85. Not much there. It's fine. Just a little bit of sharpening. I'll save that now, and that'll save another file, like the original raw file. It's killing my CPU. Photoshop is one of the most intensive programs you can run. So now it's a TIF. Just have a look at it from here. And that's excellent, actually. Excellent, bringing out this beautiful Sydney. So that's the image, and that'll be going onto Flickr right now. I'm just exporting as a JPEG file. And it's exported. Now, if I wanted to print this image, what I would do is change this aspect ratio to 3:1. And I would probably do it in something like this. Because it's keeping the height, it's going to take off the edges. So I can cut off some of this on the left here. And I can definitely take out that bit of stone wall on the right and keep the overall image. Something like that is good for a print. But I don't need to print the image right now, so I can do the full crop. So that's basically it for Cityscapes. I hope you enjoyed my process. If you would like to ask any questions, please do so. And write in the comments. And watch my channel for future photography videos. Thanks.